Welcome to another edition of Vigorously with me, Val Kleinhands. We have a very special guest in the building. Melissa Hussong is here, podcaster extraordinaire, encouraging you to be a badass in business. Melissa, welcome all the way from Australia. Thank you for being here.
Hey Val, what's up?
I'm so excited to have you here. I love the energy behind a full-time freedom. We've been following each other for a minute. I'm very excited for this. We're ready to go today. But before we dive too deep, I want to start by talking motorcycles because we both enjoy them. They're fun.
Yeah.
They're fun to watch. They're fun to be on. I didn't know that they've actually been around since the 1800s. How long have you been riding for?
Yeah, so about 5 years now, and I learned to ride in Minnesota.
Did
Um,
you?
yes. I learned to ride. Not only that, but I became a motorcycle instructor in Minnesota, and I taught there for a season out of St. Paul
No.
College.
Okay, why in the world would you leave Australia and come to cold Minnesota?
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a love story. My husband's from Wisconsin, so
Oh,
we
okay.
moved to the Midwest,
Okay.
probably 12, no, it was been like 14 years ago. And then I lived in the Midwest for 11 years.
Okay.
The winter is very brutal,
Yep.
but I gotta say, I got used to it and
Yeah.
it grew on me and I loved it. So I miss it a lot.
Yeah. I understand. I mean, I'd rather be cold than hot, so I'll take it. But I miss my native Pittsburgh, which is a little bit warmer, a little bit, not
Yeah.
much. I mean, we still have winters, but not to the degree that we do here in Minnesota. It's another level.
Yeah. Yeah. And the riding season is short because of that. So
It
like
is.
Minnesota, it's like half the year is winter. So in the
Yeah.
summer season, everyone's like, all right, let's hit it. I'm going to ride every day, every weekend, hit the river
Yeah.
and just go as far as you can.
Yeah, that's always the goal of every summer. I read the first like Harley Davidson bike only went like 40 kilometers an hour, 25 miles per hour for us in the US. How fast does your bike go?
Uh, Look, it probably has the capacity. So we talk kilometers an hour.
Yeah,
So it could probably go like to 150, maybe 200, like capacity wise.
a
So like that would
triple,
be as fast as
quadruple.
you, yeah. But I mean, speed limits in Australia sadly are very slow. So I haven't really
Oh,
revved it to that far yet. But I feel like you riding motorcycles, you got to break the little rules. You got to speed. It's kind of part of the territory.
that's the nature. There's a reason that we love the rebellious atmosphere about them. I mean,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. The
So
rules are
what
made to be broken. Just a
they
guide.
are. That's the rule. That's the
Hmm.
rule is break the rule. Period.
Hmm.
So the turn to podcasting, how did that happen? Tell me about that.
Yeah. We started the podcast probably like 2.5 years ago. And it really came out of conversations I was just having with friends. We were
Mhm.
having a weekly call. It's called a mastermind. So we would talk about our goals and our businesses. And all three of us were creating businesses at the time. And then we just thought, shit, like we're having really cool conversations about business and stuff that like everyone can learn from. So why don't we just
Mm,
record these conversations so other people can learn from our mistakes and learn from all the shit that we're going through and the blood,
yeah.
sweat, and tears and help other women. So that's how it started. Like just, we made that decision. We recorded the next day. It was very grassroots, just figuring it out as we went. And then, yeah, I don't know, 2.5 years later, top 10% podcast. Now I have a radio show and yeah, it's just kind of blossoming very organically. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's how to do it. Just get out there and like people ask me that all the time. How are you so comfortable putting yourself out there? And really, it's because I'm more afraid of what would happen if I didn't. I'm more
Yeah.
afraid of the regrets. That's what motivates me.
Mm.
It's you and your co-host Jesse. It sounds like you're on the same vibe with full-time freedom. That's the name of the podcast for anybody that doesn't know. But yeah, that's the vibe for sure.
Yeah, and it's like you do put yourself out there and you expose a lot of yourself. It's long form, so you have time to tell stories, you have time to go deep and
Mhm.
sometimes I forget that and then I'll meet people and someone's like, "Oh, that thing that you talked about." And I'm like, "Oh shit, like did I say too much or did I cross the line?" But I think that's why it's good, I think that's why we've stuck with it so much is because you can share that story. be
Mhm.
vulnerable. And also the more you do it, the easier it gets.
That's
Like
true.
as with anything.
Yeah, totally true. Did you and because correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you're based in Australia, Jesse's based here in the States. Did you two meet because of the Midwest connection? Is that what happened?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we went to grad school at Illinois State University. So I lived
Okay,
in
shout out.
yeah, shout out. I
Shout
lived
out.
in
We got some
Central
Illinoisans in
Illinois.
here. Okay.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
did too. I lived in
Yeah.
Peru and Ottawa, like that area.
No way. Yeah. I started in Peoria and then
Okay.
Bloomington
Not
for
far.
school. And then I lived in the Chicago suburbs for like a year-ish as well,
Okay.
in Wakanda. So yeah, tons of Midwest. Yep, all
Tons of
over.
Midwest representation here. But no,
Hmm.
so Jessie definitely keeps up with the Midwest spirit from what I've heard of her, and that like we're hardworking people. I mean, I feel
Yep.
like I've adopted the Midwest as my people, even if I'm not a native. But like, it's I love listening to the two of you just bounce ideas off each other too. It's really awesome. One of the recent episodes that I heard was you guys sharing a story that involved facing rejection, which is something we all have encountered. Anybody that tries anything is going to face it at some point. It's inevitable. But it was a conference that you wanted to keynote, you wanted to speak at. You didn't get it only because the pitch didn't necessarily align with their specific theme. That's
Yeah.
the story that I recall. So, and I have to tell you, I learned from that story too, because it reminded me to be as specific as possible when it comes to pitching anything.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
that was the takeaway from what I heard. Can you elaborate a little bit more or speak to bouncing back after rejection and taking it in stride?
Yeah, man, like rejection sucks, okay? But I think there is a way to handle it in the way that we like turn it from being like something that sucks into something that gives us strength and makes us like come back stronger the next time around. And I really learned that in sales. Yeah, I mean, the more you ask for something in sales, the more chance you have to be rejected. It's just a numbers game. But how you learn going forward is like, okay, try and get feedback. Like, where did I go wrong? Like, if it's
Mhm.
not a situation where you can ask specifically, maybe it's like, wow, I really felt like I could have done this better, or, maybe I could have been more specific, or maybe I could have talked about this. And I think it's not saying like you suck forever. It's like
Right.
this wasn't successful for these reasons. Okay, so now what? Let's flex, let's adapt, try again, because a no is never just like no forever. It's often never personal. It's
Mhm.
actually just like, okay, not yet. So then, okay, adapt, try again, not yet. Okay, now what? And honestly, I think rejection is severely underrated for actually making you a better person
Yeah.
because you become stronger, you get better, especially with these keynotes that we're doing, you learn to know what people want, what drives them, what drives their decisions, and then use that to your advantage and be like, okay, cool, like what do I have in my toolbox to like address that
Mhm.
specifically? And then you get closer to a yes.
Yeah, you're storing it as intel, so to speak. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
just like, this is how I'm going to maneuver because I have this bit of information. And honestly, I was terrified of networking and putting myself out there for a long
Mm,
time because the concept sounded slimy to me.
yeah.
It seemed just like a little slimy and disingenuous. Just knowing that, okay, I'm mentally taking a list up here while I'm talking with somebody to
Yeah.
use that information somehow for my potential benefit later.
Yep. Yep.
Was that ever something that you had to work through and get over too?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think networking again, like we're putting ourselves out there, you're putting yourself in a potentially vulnerable situation. Are they going to like me? Are they going to not? And a
Mhm.
lot of that time, like that, those sort of social expectations or interactions are like from when we were a kid, maybe someone didn't let us sit at the table, or maybe they were like, no, you can't hang with us because you're not wearing the right t-shirt or something.
Yeah.
Um, but just being like, okay, it's not that. We're just adults in some kind of interaction now. And it doesn't have to be weird. It can be a genuine interaction. And I think that's the piece that we lose lose track of, because it's like you're just connecting with another person. It doesn't have to be for this specific outcome. You don't have to bring business cards, because that does feel icky. But like,
Hmm.
what does it mean to like have a connection, build rapport, find common ground?
Hmm.
We do this naturally with friends all the time. We do it with people at the coffee shop, but it's like, let's not make it weird. It doesn't have to be. We actually
Yeah,
did an episode on that, Val. I'm gonna send
you
that to
did.
you.
Yeah,
Yep.
I got bits and pieces of it while I was going through some things. And it was helpful to have those reminders as well, because it can feel weird and awkward and uncomfortable at times. But for me, I think what worked was just keeping at the forefront of my mind the fact that, this relationship definitely doesn't have to be one-sided. Yes, I might be taking notes, but
Yeah.
it can be mutually beneficial. And
Yeah.
somehow focusing on that part of it makes it less slimy in my
Yep.
is how I rationalized it. Like, well, let's
Yep.
focus on making it mutually beneficial, because you don't know if someday they're going to come back to you and need something. They very well could. In my case, or yours too, maybe they need help with media, maybe they need help with digital design, audio editing, things like that. Well, that's our wheelhouse. That's great.
Yeah.
Somebody else might need that skill. You don't know what somebody else could be looking for. So who knows? It doesn't hurt to at least try to put yourself out there. I got nervous for that, to do that for a long time. I was afraid of feedback for a long time, because to me, I always associated feedback as like just constant negative criticism, because I did
Mm.
have a lot of experiences way earlier in my career where the criticism wasn't constructive at all. There was nothing,
Yeah.
there were no action items from it. There were no it was subjective,
Yeah.
and it's hard not to take subjective things like that personally. So I was
Yeah.
like terrified of feedback for a long time, and I'm only just now learning at 34 years old that feedback can be just that, feedback. That's
Mm.
it. You
Mm-hmm.
can hang on to it or you can throw it away.
Yeah,
How?
recently I have a story about that. So with my radio show, I have an editor at the station, and I had I've been sending him a bunch of interviews, and I just dropped into an email once. I was like, "Hey, let me know if you have any feedback on my interviews. Like, happy to, you know,
Mm-hmm.
adjust." And he sent me back some feedback,
Oh, I
and
bet he did.
it was like, it's when you ask for feedback, it's one thing, but receiving it is still like, feels like a little stab in the heart. But
Yeah.
I was triggered initially, and then it took me a couple of days to be like, okay, he really didn't hold back, but that's not a bad thing, because like there was a point to it, and like he had some validity in what he was saying, and like, how can I adjust?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's always like, wow, you still got to read those words and be like, okay, it's humbling and it can be triggering, but also, yeah, at the end of the day, I did make the change, and I think my interviews are better for it.
Yeah. And they're just words. I had to focus on
Yeah.
that too. You
Yeah.
doing that in the radio world, shout out to you, because that was the radio world was my earlier part of my
Mm,
career. And I
mm,
I had a hard time with it just because of the misogyny, those
yeah.
misogynistic undertones that sometimes
Yeah.
happen. And uh, that that's where I got confused with, that behavior with the lack of constructive criticism too. And I couldn't make sense of any of it. It was just, again, subjective criticism. So shout out to whoever it was that you were working with that actually gave you something constructive and substantial to focus on.
And like, I'm be so curious, Val, on how radio and podcasting is different for you, because I feel like in
Mhm.
podcasting, I can lean into who I am and like my authenticity more. Whereas
Exactly.
radio, like, I even feel like my voice is like more newsreader. I'm very much like, stick to the
Exactly.
script, stick to the question. Where here I'm like, it's a free for all. I can be whoever the F I want to be,
Yeah.
and that's
S-
fine.
Spot on. You're spot on. I was on the air for 5.5 years. And
Wow.
that was my experience too. Just personally, was that I felt very boxed in. I felt like
Yeah.
you need to fit the image and the aesthetic of what a country DJ would be, or a pop
Mm,
top 40 DJ would be. And for this tiny meatball rock and roller, that was not easy to do. I was like, you want me to like lighten my hair, and like, what? I mean, they
wow.
didn't say lighten your hair, but I was getting mixed messages and taking it really hard mentally. And I thought, well, Jesus, I'll do whatever I have to please these people because I wanted to do the act
Mm,
of broadcast so bad. So when I experimented with podcasting in 2020, that's when I realized, oh, with this format, I have way more creative freedom than I ever
mm,
did when five guys who are 60 plus are trying to tell me about a target demographic that they want to reach that I'm within. They want
yeah.
it didn't make any sense. So yes, I would say you are spot on and continue podcasting if that's your vibe because you're going to find that you feel a lot better doing it that way.
Okay. That's awesome. I love you're a fucking star, by the way. Like, if no one has told you that, like since I connected with you, like obviously I love the fashion, but it's deeper than that, right? It's who you are and the personality. Your solo episodes are fire. The way you can
Really?
jump on the mic. Yes.
Thank
Yes,
you.
100%. Jump on the mic and just spit fire that is like hilarious. You even have me laughing at reality TV shows that I don't watch. And I'm just like, this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
so entertaining.
Love Island. Love Island gets me every time. I don't what are the big reality TV shows in Australia? Are there any common ones, maybe?
Oh, a lot of them are like renovation shows.
Oh, we have those too. Yeah.
Like, but they're big. Like one is called The Block. We also have like we've had The Bachelor, The Bachelorette.
Yeah, yeah.
One you might not have in the US is what is it? Like Farmer Wants a Wife. Have you ever
Oh yeah,
seen that?
we do.
You have that too?
We just got the American version of Farmer Wants a Wife. Yes. I know
Okay.
exactly what
Okay.
that is. Yeah. It's
Yeah, that's a hit.
hilarious.
Yeah.
It's
It's big.
I love the fish out of water concept with that one too. With some of the girls that are like definitely city girls, it's like, oh, people forget most of the country, at least in our case, is rural. Like there's only a few spots, kind of like
Yeah.
Australia, like on the coast, where that might be numbers wise where a lot of people are, but there's still a whole other section of states that's miles and miles and miles of country where there's people there too. And we forget
Yeah.
that. So it's fun to see a show that sort of acknowledges that and then has fun with the fish out of water concept sometimes too. I
Yeah.
love the way that they do it.
Yeah, it's a good one. I recommend.
So what made you I would call you a mentor, a business coach, all the above. What made you want to do that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, so when I got into riding motorcycles and then I became a motorcycle coach, I started to dip my toes into like the online business space, the content creator space.
Mhm.
And I was putting a lot of content about motorcycles online. And um, then I was like, wow, this is resonating. Like it was just when motorcycles were kind of like getting really big on social.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, like something about this is like setting women on fire. Like, obviously, I became obsessed with writing immediately. And then I just thought, wow, what is it about it? And people like resonated with like the badassery, the
Yes.
like the courage, the boldness,
Yes.
like not
Yes.
giving a fuck vibe. And then that sort of was just like, I don't know, I think there's a mindset piece here. It's not just motorcycles because people resonate with those topics, but will never ride. So it's
Mhm.
like, what is it? And then I kind of was like, oh, I think it's the mindset piece. And then I went into that, became a mindset coach. And then I was like, fuck it. No, it's the business piece. That's who I am. And that's what I'm
Mhm.
about. And I went to school for business stuff, economics, grad school, and all that. And then I've just like freaking loved business. Like I binge that shit. Like I can't explain it. But, and it sounds really dorky, but like even when I wasn't in school, I was just reading business books. Like all these books behind me are all business books. And
Yeah.
I think that's what the podcast really led me to. And, you know, to that idea of like the path of least resistance is usually
Mhm.
like what you're best at. And
Mhm.
I didn't even figure that out until probably 6 months ago that I was like, wow, the podcasting is taking off. I never really intended that. I can't explain it. Also, I'm really good at this business thing. I can't explain it. It just happens. And then I was like, oh, it's business. Like I was already serving a lot of women entrepreneurs at the time. And then, you know, the universe reflects back to you what you are.
I
So
think
I
so.
was just like, yeah, I think that's it. And it feels really good. I love it. I just really believe in sharing knowledge, you know? Like why gatekeep it? Like it should be for everyone. If what I've been through, if what my clients have been through, whatever, if I can tell a story that's going to
Yeah.
help someone like skip a year of their life, like fuck, I'm going to do that
Right.
because there's value in it.
Particularly when it comes to women supporting women, because I have a
Mm,
fuck ton of stories about just the misogyny and chauvinism that happens behind the scene. It just in multiple industries, not just, radio, what I did, but I mean, I've been in the restaurant industry. I work on a hospital now. You see little glimmers of that each time. And it's like, ooh, I don't want that reflected. So if I wouldn't do that to somebody else, I'm going to put out into the world what it is that I want to see, which is what
yeah.
you're doing. I, that,
Yeah.
so it's amazing and it's wonderful. Back to social media. I mean, we both love to use it. We've been using it for some time. When it comes to business or a project that you're trying to blow up, maybe the podcast, for example, what are your general tips for success?
Oh, man, so good. Like, I've thrown so much spaghetti at the wall to be like, what the fuck is this? Like, what
Best
is this
method
nut?
ever.
I need to
Best method.
I need to crack this shit soon. But I like real talk, Val, real talk. It is being yourself. It is telling stories.
Mm,
It is sharing your wins. Telling stories, number one, sharing your wins, number two. That's what blows up for me on social. And I think because it's real, like people love to support other women. People love to have a light to look at and be like, fuck, she's doing it. I can do it
yes.
too. And I
Hmm.
think that's what it is. Telling stories that have vulnerability to be like, yeah, I've seen some shit and it was hard, but I overcame it.
Hmm.
PS, you can too.
Yeah.
That's it. I don't know. Like there, for me, there it hasn't really been a hack. It's never been a trending sound. It's never been a dance. It's just like over and over, sharing pieces of my story, sharing the hard shit, sharing the wins.
Yeah, that's good news because I'm not a dancer. I can't. I like TikTok. TikTok is still something that I'm experimenting with, and I'm still trying to figure out what does that look like when it comes to me as a podcaster, and
Yeah.
is it just simply sharing clips of interviews like this one, or is it funny clips of me doing whatever and going about my daily life, and how do you if being authentic is showing your daily life. Some of us have the luxury to do that, some of us don't. I don't want to do that in
Yeah.
the hospital where I work because of we
Yeah.
want to protect patient privacy. So and it's like that's where I spend 8 hours of my day every weekday. So how do
Mhm.
I and it takes strategy, it takes planning, because you're
Yeah.
because I had to get that out of my head that I was limited to only shooting during the day. It's like, well, no.
Yeah.
If you have an idea for something, shoot it whenever you have the idea for it.
Mhm.
Do you
Mhm.
is that
100%.
and batch content? I know you're
Yeah.
proponents of batching content too. It's so helpful. So
Yeah,
helpful.
batching for sure. And I think to your point there, Val, like we do share like the short form clips of podcast
Hmm.
interviews, which I find a lot of value in. I would say like it's just showing up and okay, this might sound weird. But just saying what you want to say, how you want to say it,
Mm.
and like not giving a fuck.
Yeah.
Like talk or share what's on your mind in a way that like you would share to your bestie
Mm.
or to like someone who's really close to you. And like maybe I would say to my husband like, "Oh my god, like this person like blah blah blah," or like I would talk to a client and be like, "Have you thought about this?" Like blah blah blah. So it's just showing up and sharing what's on your mind, taking that inspiration like you said. It will put these frameworks and be like, I can't work between this time, or like it has to be the daylight, or I've taken
Yeah.
podcast interview slots like this at like midnight because it's like fuck, like that's when she's available,
Wow.
so I'm gonna make that work for her.
Y-
um it's just like doing it. I don't know that there's a shortcut, but showing up in a way that feels good, that
Mhm.
is on your mind. Like if you have a sweet idea for like a funny little voice note or something, or like a great outfit, post it. Who gives a shit?
Period. Let's go. What is next for you? What is next for full-time freedom? Anything you want to share? What can we look forward to?
Yeah, so we are speaking this fall. I'm flying back to the States. We've got
Fun.
a couple. Yeah, we're gonna actually Central Illinois. We're going to Peoria
Yes.
for two keynotes and a workshop. So Jesse lives in Central Illinois, and we'll be doing that. And then I think just really leaning into whatever traction comes from that. We love talking, we love expressing, we love sharing information. So the speaking would be fun. I'm open to anything. I love coaching. I think that will always be what I'm part of. And supporting women, like hashtag women supporting women is always still the first thing I type when I'm doing hashtags. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think that that for sure. And then family stuff. Yeah, I've got a young family, so just keeping that going and trying to focus on that a lot.
That's beautiful. I can't wait to see it all. Melissa, thank you for your time. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Thanks, Val. It's been a blast.